Hello everyone, hope you're well. Thanks for joining us today at this Collaborating to Support Net Zero session held in partnership with CEIS and Interface. And it's to look primarily about working with academia to deliver net zero targets. So my name is Jayne. I'm the membership manager here at Social Enterprise Scotland. We are the membership and representative body for social enterprises in Scotland. And very briefly, our role is to raise the profile of social enterprises, increase awareness and understanding of the model, and ensure that their expertise and contribution to a better Scotland is recognised and valued. We represent members' interests, trying to influence the policy environment to ensure we have it's a type of environment where social enterprises can thrive. We keep members informed with regular news updates. We promote members across all sectors. And a significant part of our role is to connect and network members and to promote learning and collaborative opportunities in a number of different ways, including sessions like these. So like most of our sessions, this one will be pretty informal. There will be time to ask questions and hopefully to share some of your own experiences on the subject. I'm quickly going to run through housekeeping. If you can keep yourself on mute through the presentations, and then when we get to the kind of Q&A discussion section, just raise your hand if you want to come in. As I said, please use the chat to say hello, say where you're joining us from. If you want to share any information through the chat or ask any questions, please feel free. We will be sharing the presentation after the session, and we would also like to share your email addresses with Interface, our partners Interface also. So if you would prefer that not to happen, just let me know privately on the chat. Also, finally, on the housekeeping, just to say we're recording the session today, as I know a number of folk who wanted to come along couldn't make it. So it's just to be mindful of that. If you have a question to ask and you prefer not to come on screen, then again, put it in the chat and we can ask it on your behalf. So I'm really looking forward to today's session. It's obviously such an important topic. We know it's a bit of a mixed picture across social enterprise in terms of net zero, and this is an opportunity to look at how we can collaborate to drive innovation and deliver on all our net zero ambitions. I guess from Social Enterprise Scotland's point of view and the membership side, it's a learning opportunity for me, and it's going to allow me to share the information and learning from the session with the many social enterprises I speak to. So we've got James Finnie here today, who's new business development team leader at CEIS. And he's going to set the net zero scene for us and give us an insight into the work of the net zero subgroup in relation to the Social Enterprise Action Plan. Laura Goodfellow, who's Associate Director, Business Engagement and Systems at Interface, will tell us a little bit more about the service they offer and how they can support you. And the final part of our session is going to be a fireside chat. And we're delighted that Dr. Fiona MacLennan is joining James and Laura for that. Fiona is Carbon Reduction Project Manager at Creative Carbon Scotland, quite a mouthful to say, and she will share with us how engaging with academia has supported her organisation. And again, just a reminder to kind of post any questions that you have as we go along in the chat, if you like. So I am just going to hand over to James.
Thank you, Jayne. Good morning, everyone. Lovely to speak with you today. My name is James Finnie. I work for Community Enterprise in Scotland, CEIS. For those who don't know CEIS, we're Scotland's largest social enterprise development agency based in Glasgow. And really what I wanted to do just at the top of today's session was maybe just discuss some of the context of net zero within the third sector. I assume as third sector organisations joining today, you've got a specific interest in the net zero topic area. So What I wanted to do, therefore, was set today's sessions in that wider context, whereby within Scotland, we've obviously got the specific target of achieving net zero emissions of all greenhouse gases by 2045. And within the third sector, for the last couple of years, we have brought together a number of organisations to discuss about how we respond as a sector to achieving that target. So if I could ask Joe to move to the next slide, please. What this slide shows is that every 2 years within Scotland, we do a census of the social enterprise sector. And I'm mindful that social enterprise is only a part of the third sector. However, what I would say is that the results of the census in regards to net zero that I'm about to show and go through with you are also in line with a survey done by SCVO of the wider third sector in 2021. So the survey of the census findings earlier this year showed a couple of key things. Number one, on the left-hand side, the level of preparedness by the social enterprise sector and, as I said, the wider third sector in regards to the transition to net zero. And what you see there is that only less than 9% of organisations are extremely prepared. The balance of organisations there only are somewhat and not so well and not all prepared at all. So what we know is that organisations within the sector are looking for that support and that resources and help to be able to take that transition journey. When we then asked about the type of support that the organisations were looking for, then a range of kind of mechanisms came through: funding, information on practical steps, technical support, and also peer-to-peer learning. So, Joe, if you go to the next slide. So collectively, what we have done as a sector, CEIS and a number of partners have brought a working group together. And what you can see here are the working group partners. And hopefully what you'll see from this is that it's a white church of organisations from across the third sector that have come together, those within the social enterprise specific sector, but also those specifically supporting the wider third sector. So you'll see here from CEIS, SCVO, and also those who are focused specifically in the net zero space and also in support of communities, all the way ranging down to Voluntary Action North Lanarkshire, who represent the TSI network as well within Scotland. So you'll see a collaboration of the widest body of organisations from across the third sector coming together to discuss how can we collectively support the sector to be able to take this journey. Further to that, that dialogue has extended into speaking to the funders that fund the sector. So Scotland Funders Forum specifically brings a number of the key main funders in Scotland together, and we have engaged with them since last year about the solutions and the resources we could put to bear to support the sector. So what has happened in the last 18 months, we've been working collaboratively, all the partners around the table, and the stage that we've got to now is we've developed a 4-step model to support the third sector transition towards net zero. Joe, if you could go to the next slide, please. And what this slide tries to show is a nice simplistic mechanism of the 4-step journey that is being developed. So firstly, there's a website, and the Growing Climate Confidence website is at the final stages of being developed just now. And really that's there to help organisations to just become informed and aware about net zero and the types of challenges that they may be facing as an organisation. The website is organised thematically, so it allows you to look at a whole manner of topic areas. It also shares some fantastic resources as well. And as I said, all of those partners together have come together under this umbrella. Secondly, a scorecard has been developed as part of the website. And what that does is it's approximately 5 minutes, and it's a pulse check for organisations to just find out where are they in their progress towards net zero. Once again, focused around key topic areas, an initial question set, and from there, a scorecard and action plan can be created from that. So those two initial resources are in the final throes of being tested by a number of third sector organisations, and we're now discussing what the comms plan looks like to bring this towards the sector from May onwards. So that will be coming through. All of those partner organisations will be communicating this in the months to come. And then towards the end of this year, we're also looking at developing stage 3 and 4. And for those organisations who want to have a more detailed action plan process, then there's an action planning tool that we've identified that we think is excellent and going to be great in supporting the third sector. And the fourth element of that is reporting. And from that tool will become a consistent reporting tool that will allow organisations to report either by action area, by thematic area, or by scopes 1, 2, and 3. So depending upon who the end audience is, be it Scottish Government, for example, for things like procurement, or funders, or the general public, it will give a mechanism to allow you to flip in your reporting from the one source and be able to communicate the actions that you're taking. So that's a 4-step journey. That's the context, the wider context in regards to the third sector. And we wanted, because of the organisations on today's call, we wanted to kind of share that with you so that it makes you familiar with the resources that are going to be coming down the line in the next couple of months to support you as organisations to take this journey. However, that's the resources that are coming. We also have wanted today to set it in context in regards to the support that's available through Interface. We're very mindful that, as the third sector continues to grow, organisations are now landowners, owners of building assets, housing, energy assets, a whole range, of specific developments that third sector organisations have been making over the years. And those bring specific challenges. And some of those challenges in regards to the net zero environment, may not be addressed by the resources that we've got available at this time. And what that does is that allows the ability of organisations like Interface to come with specific skill sets, resources, and knowledge to support the third sector organisations. In the last 3 or 4 years, we've been running a series of webinars with Interface, to try and raise the awareness of Interface and the support ecosystem that sits behind Interface to third sector organisations. And so today we wanted to set that initial context, but also open up that wider support opportunity provided by Interface for those organisations that are also facing specific net zero challenges, and how Interface can support you to address those. So without any more time from me, I'd now like to hand back over to Interface, to Laura Goodfellow, the Head of Business Engagement at Interface, and Laura will take you through the next part of today's session. Laura.
Thank you so much, James, and thank you everyone from me as well for joining today. I'm just wanting to run you through a little bit about Interface. So if we move on to our kind of first slide, it's just really to explain to the Interface is an established feature within the Scottish innovation landscape. Now, we've got a 15-year history working with SMEs and organisations across all sectors, matching them into the world-leading expertise within Scottish universities. So Interface was created in 2005 to address the identified gap to help businesses identify the right academic expertise to support their R&D, but also support academia and finding industry partners to work with. So move on to the next slide. It's a free service and we offer Scotland-wide access. We're funded by the Scottish Funding Council, Scottish Enterprise, South of Scotland Enterprise and Highlands and Islands Enterprise. And again, we work with organisations across all industry sectors, and as James says, linking into all the support organisations as well, as many as we can, to ensure that our message is part of the toolkit that these organisations can offer to businesses. So moving on to the next slide, you can see there's a range of ways to engage with the universities. There's the research and technology, there's access to equipment and facilities that would be expensive for an organisation to purchase, but there you could access it within a university or a college. There could be a student project that could help work on a real life challenge for your business. There's consultancy. There's a whole host of different ways in which you can engage. And if we move on to the next slide, you'll see why you don't need to be too focused on that. Is because we've got a team based the length and breadth of Scotland. So we've got people in Dumfries and Galloway, people in Highlands and Islands that will sit with you and work through what is that challenge that you're facing and help you kind of scope and frame that before we issue it across the universities so that they can come and suggest to you the best way in which that project could perhaps be delivered, and if a funding option is something that you want to explore. You can see too that we align across the Scottish Government priorities that we've kind of outlined there as well. So the other message within this slide is that geography is no barrier. Scotland is small. Across Scotland, we are very, very lucky with the kind of academic expertise that we have, and it is unusual that we don't find expertise that can support you. And if the expertise is in the University of Aberdeen, then there's absolutely no challenge in working with a business in the Borders or Dumfries and Galloway. So if we move on to the next slide as well, you can see that just putting some facts and figures to what we've done, and over 3,300 collaborations since we started have been brokered between an organisation and the university. You can see there's 100% satisfaction with what we do, and the strength though in this slide to me is the 97% that said their project wouldn't have happened or would have taken longer without Interface support. And I think part of that is where Interface would stay involved from the kind of whole journey. So from that initial scoping that I spoke about, right through to the kind of introduction to the university, right through to ensuring that the kind of contractual thing, the contracts are in place, and following up with you afterwards to see what the impact of the collaboration has been. So if we move on to the next slide, another strand of what we do as well as that kind of brokerage side is that we administer different funding pots. So we administer the Scottish Funding Council Innovation Voucher programme on behalf of the Funding Council. And then in August 22, we took out the kind of outsourced responsibility for that approval and individual payment of that. We also manage different funding pots on behalf of different organisations. So the Advanced Innovation Voucher on behalf of Scottish Enterprise, and also we're involved with sort of challenge or specific theme funding through Scotland's Food and Drink Federation and also the Scottish Government on different themes. But again, don't be too worried about how we, which particular funding pot you might look after. You might want to go after it. The team will kind of support you there as well. So if I move on to the next slide is the impact that I spoke about. So what we do is we keep in touch with the business to find out what impacts have been realised. And if we look at this particular pool, we've looked at the project since August 2018, over 1,000 collaborations in that time, with over 1,000 new product processes and services recorded, and there are 50% of companies forecasting a turnover increase 1 year post-project completion, as well as the safeguarded and newly created jobs. So to move on to kind of my final slide, it's not just the economic impacts that are important, the environmental and societal impacts are as important too. And if we look at the last year, 88% of the projects we facilitated have demonstrated positive environmental and or societal impact, with 35% of projects supporting equality and diversity, 59% positive environmental impact, which we're really proud of. And we when we're meeting with the business and the organisations as well, is we really encourage them at the outset to think of what the impact and why they're doing this and the difference that it's going to make. So moving on to the very final slide, which will be shared with you as the follow-up pack, is how to kind of get in touch with us so that we can kind of work with you on the things that I've spoken about. So our contact information is there. Like I say, it'll be shared with you. But that is all from me. We're going to move on to the Fireside chat now, which is a bit I'm sure you've all signed up for and to hear. So can I welcome Dr. Fiona MacLennan and also James as well is going to join us again for the Fireside chat. So Fiona, I'm not going to do a huge introduction on you because my very first question is to ask you to tell me a bit about yourself and Creative Carbon Scotland.
Yeah, sure. Okay, so Creative Carbon Scotland came about when Ben Twist, who is our director, realised that the arts and culture should play a role in solving the problems associated with the climate crisis, just to to try and kind of roll that up. So I joined Creative Carbon in 2014, about a year after it was incorporated as a charity, and my background is in physics and engineering, and I'd had about 30 years of working in industry and academia, and I decided to go back and do an MSc in renewable energy, and was looking for something related to that field. So one of my main tasks when I first joined CCS, it wasn't quite renewable energy, it was more about carbon counting, but we had decided to collect information on about 120 arts organisations who were funded by Creative Scotland. And they supported us in requiring organisations who are funded to provide information on their carbon footprints. So this was quite a kind of new thing, quite a lot to ask of people. But we did get really good engagement, and we collected quite a lot of data. I'm not saying the data was high quality because people struggled to provide it, but they were making the effort. They were starting to understand the impact of what they were doing. And so we had a whole lot of data to let people, and our aim was always to try and help to educate and influence people, but that were collecting the data rather than to sort of hold something over them and say you've got to reduce your footprint. So we were hoping to use the exercise of collecting information to influence the way that arts organisations and artists worked, and the choice of the work they were making. So that's that kind of sums up what we've been doing as an organisation, I think.
No, that makes absolute sense. And what was it that encouraged you to contact Interface in the first instance?
Well, it's partly I was sort of aware of the usefulness of getting help from academia, but we also had one of my colleagues had become involved with Interface on a really good project, because they wanted to create a library of case studies, and they wanted to create it in such a way that it was very accessible and it looked good and was easy to have it web-based and so on. And it was all a wee bit much for us to do on our own, because we at that time, I think we were 4 men and a dog, basically. So Interface helped put together a sort of whole group of people together with some ex-colleagues to create what ended up becoming the Library of Creative Sustainability. And that's still being developed today, and it's still sort of having an influence and, you know, allowing to make contacts and producing more material which people can access. So the anyway, so having heard about that and going back to the fact that we had lots of data that we were collecting, I was quite keen to sort of look at the data in a bit more detail to see what trends there were. And if you can imagine, each year we used to get a huge spreadsheet which had information from about 120 people, and they were giving us about, I don't know, 50 bits of information each. So trying to do anything with that manually was a huge job. And after 5 years, it was just overwhelming. So we were really keen to sort of see if there was anybody who could help us to either just spend time doing the analysis or preferably find a better way of doing it. And we were really keen to get some visualization as well, so that we could use that to feed back to the people who are supplying the data, because that's such a key thing in our work, is just always to kind of keep the information flowing back. And I have to say, we got a fantastic result out of that, and changed the whole way that we interacted with the reporting organisations. So it did far more than I had envisaged and imagined. So
yeah, no, I don't blame you looking for support. I mean, I like a spreadsheet, but that is a lot of data to be kind of working your way through. Can you explain a little bit more detail, maybe how some of the sort of the specific project or what it is actually kind of the academics and some of the students did as well, because there was kind of multiple projects across different universities as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, we've done quite a few collaborations, not always with Interface. I mean, there's been a real mix with academics, but we've been involved with master's projects, so that we've worked with students just over a summer. And actually, the data visualization project was with a master's student, and that so it's not necessary to have a really big project. But some of the other projects have been much longer lasting. So, for example, we've worked with a PhD student at Glasgow University doing evaluation of the work that we're doing. And obviously that's over 3 years. I've collaborated with an academic at Heriot-Watt University to do measurements on a building. We've had someone from Edinburgh College of Art who has done a project looking at how artwork is stored and the footprint related to that. I could go on and on. There's so many of the things.
Is there one in particular, do you think, that sort of benefited Creative Carbon Scotland sort of more than others? Is there kind of one that's your kind of standout project?
Standout project? Gosh, well, I mean,
or just the one that's provided the most benefit, maybe to.
Oh, it's so hard to choose, really. I mean, they've all been really beneficial. I think the Library of Creative Sustainability obviously is a project which has just sort of grown and grown. So I would say that the data visualization has had huge impact on the way that we carry out the our sort of year-to-year work, and so they're both sort of in there. I can't really choose between those two.
No, that's fair enough. And you mentioned like some of the kind of projects happened as well without Interface, which is absolutely the way of it, because we're there to support the universities and the colleges with their own business development outreach. We're there to support businesses that are not sure who to approach, but you kind of
it helps us to make contacts with academics, and sometimes just chance conversations mean that you sort of develop other projects. And there's quite a big project which we're involved in at the moment as well, which is looking at mapping music venues in Glasgow and trying to sort of work out what the network is. And I think that's been again one of those things where it's been a bit of an organic growth of partners in the project. But I think the ability to be able to just go to somebody and say, who's working on this, or we're interested in doing this, is it feasible, has been really valuable.
That's interesting, and that's where we would kind of hope as well. It wouldn't sort of be almost like transactional relationships. We'd be hoping that relationships would develop and pull in other partners as well. Do you think, Fiona, overall, you would be sort of where you are just now without academic support?
No, definitely. It's been a real game changer for us in many respects. As I say, we interact with the reporting organisations in a completely different way. I mean, beforehand, we could do a sort of overall report, which we put on the website. Now we send out the individual and detailed reports. Sort of similar to what James showed us about the scorecard. And about 2 or 3 years ago, we started being able to send everybody their scorecard individually and challenge them to, understand how they could improve their footprint, how they could change their practice, and so on. So that was really did make a big difference.
So what would you say then, Fiona, to anyone thinking about kind of accessing academia and seeking support from them?
I think, the main thing is if you're speaking to anybody externally who has that sort of expertise, they bring a lot of fresh thinking, they bring a lot of enthusiasm and a bit of energy, and I think you have to allow space for that. So if you define what your project is, what it is that you want fairly well to start with, but don't be too dogmatic and allow people to come to you and say, well, this is what I know about, this could help you. So it's not a case of saying, give me this very well-defined output. It's more about the collaboration and the discussion and the like I say, the fresh thinking, and the willingness to kind of take that on board, I think makes it so effective. So, you know, be quite open-minded. Also be prepared for failure. I mean, we have done 1 or 2 collaborations or with students who really weren't able to maybe help us as much as we might have liked. But I think it moved us on in understanding, and you have to accept that sometimes some projects are less successful, but nevertheless you learn from them. And I think that in those cases, what we were asking the students to do weren't really possible, as we have found out when we've spoken to people who are much more expert in the topic. So it wasn't their fault, if you like, but exploring it exposed the fact that it was a very difficult task. So, I mean, you don't always know what you're going to get out of it.
No,
but
definitely, and we're on the same page as well. And you're kind of moving into kind of what we would kind of consider almost like the top tips, and what I tried to sort of explain at the outset as well is like be clear on what your challenge is. We'll work with you and kind of translate that into something that will hopefully kind of land on the right desk within the university, because what we'll do is like share it far and wide. But actually 2 or 3 universities might suggest different ways to take that forward. They might have a group of students that could work on the project. They might suggest the innovation voucher, and actually where you kind of get, and that's why during the whole process we'll keep the kind of commercialisation team within the loop as well, and they'll help with any kind of contractual sides of it, IP, all of those kind of things as well, so that those kind of links are in place. But yeah, you don't know, part of this is dipping your toe in the water as well, and just to see it's experimental. You know, somebody, you know, a student's working on it and they're kind of invested too. So yeah, that open mind is definitely key.
And I think it's important to know that you've got backup, because you don't, you know, it gives you confidence to just launch into it as well.
And I think that's where our kind of model, I suppose, has worked for that kind of local relationship, because you've often kind of met, if not so much in person over the last few years, but certainly sort of online. So the team there have got a vested interest in making sure the businesses and organisations they support are getting what they're looking for, because they've kind of sat and spent time scoping with them. So yes.
It's been very little effort as well on my part, if you like, to, you know, look at things, because all I've had to do is sort of sit down, write a few paragraphs. Quite often someone will reflect those back to me and they'll be much better expressed, and then they go off and they look for something, and you have to put a bit of effort in doing the project. But
that's true. You're something so invested in what you're doing, or how you think that challenge is, you know, is going to be sort of realised, how the solution is going to be found, that actually you're so focused using your language as well, and just know what you mean in your head. So it's quite good to have that somebody just kind of challenge you on that, ask you questions. Well, what do you mean by that? Which is good.
So it's, I mean, just to sum up, it was a process. The process is well founded, and it wasn't a difficult process. It didn't, you know, if it wasn't going to work, we knew quite quickly it wasn't going to work, and so on. So it's always just worth a try when you come up against something you need help with.
No, definitely. So what's next for Creative Carbon Scotland then? What's next?
I mean, we were actually talking about you know, other projects that might benefit from a bit of help. I don't know if it's we're now looking at things like how life varies for people in different geographies, and we're starting to think about using GIS, and that's way beyond our capacity. So again, it's kind of brewing.
Okay. Well, we'll definitely be in touch after the webinar and see how we can help.
You know, but it's one of those sort of things where we think, maybe we could actually get some help with this, and it would really help to focus our efforts and help the kind of local networks we're trying to develop. But there's always something.
Good. I'm about to kind of pose a question to James, but just to remind you, just to be putting questions in the chat as well, and we'll kind of sum up at the end if there's any kind of coming through. So James, how important do you think academia and knowledge exchanges in supporting net zero challenges and targets?
I think it's hopefully, as Fiona's illustrated, what it does, it gives third sector organisations access to an expertise, a knowledge, a resource, as well as technical resources as well that the sector really just doesn't have, internally. So what it, in my view, in regards to interface, it can provide the solution to that problem that you can't see beyond, and having just been able to express that as a problem, and then to have the support of interface and, as I said, the academic partners to then understand how that can translate into potential solutions. That's the key. Otherwise you may just be going around thinking, how can we get beyond this? But you don't have a method to do that. So that's why at CEIS in the last 3 or 4 years, we've been really, really keen to work with interface to make and raise awareness of that solution that interface can provide, and the access to that wider innovation and support ecosystem that sits behind you. Across Scotland's 19 higher education institutions and the 7 innovation centres, it's access to an R&D capability that those organisations, third sector organisations, just don't have. And just simply by going through one point through interface and being able to express that challenge, and then allowing, working with you to manage the relationships and the responses to that. To me, it's a kind of gold dust, for organisations. And as I said in the intro, third sector organisations and the sector as a whole has developed and keeps on developing. And organisations have now got access and ownership of a whole range of resources, assets, land, energy, buildings, housing. And just like Fiona was saying, about some of the music venue challenges that she's been working with, so it can be a whole range of challenges that you're facing, but having a one point of contact that you can go to express that challenge and then get the support to hopefully move beyond it. That's the real kind of gold dust for me in regards to the service that interface provides.
No, thank you both. And I think you kind of summed it up as but vitally important. And I'm smiling as well, James, because we've got one colleague who says to our organisations, just treat me like your R&D department. And it's fair, because the organisations, many of who we're dealing with, don't have the resource and the capacity, for an R&D department. But the cross-disciplinary reach as well, so it's something that is valuable, because you don't know who to contact if you don't know how it's going to be solved.
Absolutely.
So thank you both so far. I am seeing a few questions coming in, but not in detail. So I'm going to pass over just to see if we can get some of the questions to the panel.
Because that was fascinating. I learned a lot of stuff that I didn't know before. I think interface and the academia link is a incredibly valuable and important resource for our sector. Yeah, please be assured I'll be spreading the word far and wide. So we have a question in the chat from Julie asking about the kind of application process and what's involved, and is there anything that can't be considered through interface? Laura, I guess that one's for you.
Yeah, no. So the form itself is not too involved. It's almost about sort of succinctly explaining what is the organisational challenge. What it means to your business. What have you sort of tried that's got you to this stage? It's a bit of a balancing act in terms of providing information to show that it's credible, what you've been thinking about and what you've tried to achieve, without giving war and peace as well, because it's going to land on a business development team's desk or an academic desk. So you want to have enough content there that they think this is something I want to be involved in, or I know someone, a student that would be involved in this. So the team will kind of guide you through that. It's a 2-page form. First part is standard, is the housekeeping side, a bit of information about your organisation, where you're based, etc. And the second is all about that kind of project and your kind of the next steps, because the team will challenge you as well and saying, well, after this, what will it mean here? Where else could this go? So that's the kind of the form in terms of identifying the right academic, and we can actually share the kind of outline form with you as part of the follow-up so you can see it. The second stage, where if you kind of go down the route of applying for funding, that is a separate sort of form as well. About 20% of the time, a project will be delivered with kind of one of the projects that we, the funds that we administer. And again, the university will support with that because they're very well versed in kind of completing that kind of application form. So that's that kind of stage. And then what was the second part of the question? Sorry, again. Oh, yeah, anything that would sort of displacement is probably the kind of the key word there. So we're not here to be taking anything away that would be kind of delivered by a commercial organisation. So nobody's going to build a website for you or anything like that. But as long as there's sort of an element of R&D in it and it's innovative, then it would be considered. You know, there could be as well, you know, there's students as well that are looking for projects. So, for example, we might get approached by University of Stirling for looking for host companies for their international students. So if there's flexibility within their, international marketing students, if there's flexibility in terms of your timelines, and that's something, you know, because that you'd be interested in exploring, then it could be that a student works on that as part of their kind of coursework or dissertation as well. So there's flexibility and scope for lots, but as long as it's not that clear, something you could go to a commercial organisation to buy.
Great. Thanks very much, Laura. We do have, Trev, I don't know whether you're happy to come on and talk a bit about the comment that you've posted in the chat. I think you're saying you're currently going through the first application. I guess it would be quite useful maybe to people on the call to hear a bit more about that. Trev, are you there?
Yeah.
Lovely.
Yeah, we're going through the application at the moment. Our ask or whatever is live, I think, and it comes into results come in from the academic over the next week. We're running. We wanted to look at some to do some research, R&D development research in a project that we're actually putting together at the moment. I can't say too much about the project. That's the only thing. And what we wanted to do was. We thought it was a great opportunity because it's quite a unique thing that we're looking at doing, and we thought it would be really good to get some a third-party accreditation verification that actually, rather than sort of anecdotal research and that yes, what we've done is good and all that sort of stuff, but actually get some academic studies done into it that it actually really is doing what it says it does on the tin. Would be helpful, and so we've had a discussion with them. The application came through. It's a couple of sides of A4, and I think the basic thing that I would say is, as long as you have a clear idea of what your ask is and what you foresee potentially what the academics could bring to it, then it's quite straightforward. So it has been for us anyway so far.
No, thank you for that. I'm just going to build on that slightly, just with something you said about, you know, not being able to say too much about the project, because I'm sure it's got some people thinking about kind of confidentiality. The form that we will work with you won't be shared with the universities until you're completely happy with what the content is. So whilst we're saying to put in as much as possible, you know, you're not putting in anything commercially sensitive at that stage, because it will, by very virtue of what we're going to do, be shared across the universities, but not out with. If then, so the kind of process would be, the next step for Trevor is that we will be collating the responses from the university, and there could be 2, 3, 4, and it'll be up to the company then to decide how to proceed. And if one perhaps stands out, one institution, we'll put you in touch with that team, and then if you want to have that more detailed conversation, then you can put a confidentiality agreement in place to take you to that next step. So it's sort of not commercially sensitive information at the outset, but again, the team will kind of guide you through that.
Piqued. Our interest is sufficiently piqued in the Hush Hush project that you've got going on there. So thanks for that. Hold on, I think there was another question. Julia,
yeah, a webinar next year, hopefully.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. You'll be het for it next year, Trev. Yeah, Julie, you've got a question around the work. Could the work be UK wide, and you're the sole Scottish-based employee? Colleagues are based down south. Laura, did you cover this, or did I miss that, or is there?
So there's 2 parts, I suppose, to that question. Interface, in terms of the matchmaking side, is open to everybody, all of Scotland, all the UK, internationally as well. In fact, we're trying to encourage international applications. Where there becomes a little bit of a kind of question mark is around the funding that we administer. So, for example, the innovation voucher is primarily set up for Scottish-based SMEs. Although we do have a kind of pre-submission form where that can, it's just a short kind of almost half a page of just why it should be considered if the company isn't registered in Scotland, and it could be historical reasons based in England, but somebody's based here. But provided the innovation and what is going to be done and there's going to be an impact for Scotland, then it should get through that kind of pre-submission. If not, there's another round which hopefully we're about to announce in the next couple of weeks. There's the Inward Investment Catalyst Fund, which is for companies based out with Scotland looking to relocate or set up a presence within Scotland, and that's funded through the Scottish Government, and that will support companies that don't kind of tick that box of the innovation voucher. But again, 20% of the projects have a funded element that we administer. There's other funding pots to access. So I wouldn't let that be a barrier because the kind of matchmaking side is open to all.
Excellent. Right. Thanks, Laura. Julie, I hope that kind of answers the questions that you had, and hopefully in a pretty positive way, I'd say. Do we have anyone else wanting to either ask a question on the screen, post it in the chat, or any experiences anyone else wants to share, whether it be around kind of potential interface and academic support, or I guess if you wanted to kind of know a little bit more about the Net Zero tool, or share what you're doing with your organisation. Everybody's being very quiet. It's unusual in our sector. Tim, I'm going to pick on you, I'm afraid. You posted in the chat earlier about the work that Keep Scotland Beautiful do. If you're about, I know sometimes people have to step away, but if you're about, do you want to say a little bit more about that? I guess, we are keen to highlight all the resources that are available to the sector around net zero.
Yeah, sure, that would be fantastic. Thank you. My camera should have just come on, but it's decided not to. Give me 2 seconds, and our camera wants to come on.
Cameras are very temperamental, aren't they? I've noticed that.
Connect the job list. Go to the Bluetooth menu on your smartphone and select it from the list.
Is it maybe easier just to...
Apologies there. It doesn't want to come on, but I have got sound, I think.
You have sound. We can hear you, yes.
Yeah. Let's go with that just for now. Just first of all, thank you ever so much for hosting the event and stuff. Really interesting to hear about other people's experience, and also for kind of preparedness of the sector to get to net zero, to help, step up to make sure our organisations are future-proofed as much as possible against the impacts of climate change, for physical impacts, and also policy and legislation coming down the line. So interesting to hear about the preparedness there, and obviously the big steps we need to take. At Keep Scotland Beautiful, we offer a whole range of climate emergency training, and that training is for organisations, it's for businesses, it's for individuals as well. We have accredited training, and that training is certified by the Carbon Literacy Project, and you get a certificate of carbon literacy if you complete that. What that means is you have an understanding of sources of greenhouse gas emissions on one hand, and how to tackle those emissions, practical actions to tackle them on the other hand. And we've had almost 5,000 people from across Scotland go through that training so far. So yeah, amazing to see the interest. And it's also been great to work with so many people from the third sector for that training. On kind of the other side of things, if you're just starting out on your journey to kind of look at the climate emergency, we also offer introductory training. And this is right from a 1-hour e-learning module you can go through on our website, which really takes your first steps into the climate emergency, seeing why this matters for Scotland, seeing why this matters for your organisation, those first steps you can take in tackling it, right through to offering webinars and workshops for hundreds of people at a time, which we've done again for organisations across Scotland. Yeah, and something we really enjoy doing. And the chat that we get after these events, for questions, the enthusiasm of the sector wanting to take action, not just at an organisational level, but at an individual level as well. Yeah, we've been really, really pleased to see that. But that's us in a nutshell. We'll pop the link in the chat. But thanks ever so much for hosting the event. It's been really interesting.
Thanks very much, Tim. Sorry, I thought I was still on mute for a second. Thanks very much for sharing that, Tim. I think it's really good that people know the kind of support and resources that are out there. So yeah, we'll share your link that you posted earlier, and Julie has also posted something in the chat about a kind of route map to help communities adapt. So we'll pop that on as well. Lorna has posted a question around, again to you, Laura, does there have to be a commercial outcome, or can the primary outcome be environmental?
The environmental outcome would be absolutely welcome, and that's we kind of took the opportunity to show the two kind of impact slides. So, traditionally with economic impact, we looked at, new jobs created, new products, but actually the societal environmental are equally as important. So yeah, if there's anything that you're thinking about, get in touch and we'll see what's possible.
Excellent. I mean, I think the overriding feel is, if there's an idea in your head, get in touch, speak to
and if we
Interface.
can't help, for whatever reason, we will do our very best to kind of link you into the kind of ecosystem and the network with somebody that can, because we can't solve everything, we don't know everything, and that's why we engage and do these kind of collaborative workshops as well, to share kind of across our different organisations in different contexts. Yeah, absolutely, and that's the kind of approach that we like to take as well. So thanks. I think Patrick's got his hand up. Hi, how are you doing, Patrick?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you. Hi, everybody. I'll just take my hand down before I forget. So this has been really great. The reason I actually came to Scotland was I was really interested in social enterprise, and I think I've met a couple of people on the call. I think, Laura, I met you when I was working for Zero Waste Scotland. But what I wanted to mention was, Fiona, when you talked about Creative Carbon Scotland, I was really interested in that organisation. I kind of had heard of you, but I wasn't aware of what you did.
Mm-hmm.
Interface I've heard a lot of and had dealings with in the past. I've also worked with Energy Technology Partnership through a program that I delivered for my current organisation in Scotland called Lesson. But I'm now going through TechScaler, which is a 10-week Scottish government funded 5-year program for businesses wanting to launch in Scotland, on entrepreneurs. And what I was interested in was some of the things you mentioned, Fiona, about sort of having ideas about connecting musicians or sort of live gig venues. And so I'm trying to formulate an idea that connects sustainability and musicians together. Mm-hmm. So what I want to propose is that if you want to maybe just make contact with me and just to have a discussion around sort of where your thoughts are and ideas, it could be interesting just to see. And because I think there's a huge opportunity there. I'm a musician myself, and I've done acting in the past, and that sector is sort of trying to figure out how to become more sustainable, and I think there's opportunities. So
very complex, yes.
Yeah. But yeah, great event, and well done, everybody.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Thanks very much, Patrick. Fiona, do you want to say anything to that? Or, I mean, obviously we can make sure the connection's made between you and Patrick.
Yeah, sure. I was going to say that just as long as we've got email addresses and so on. It's the project I think you're talking about is there's someone else who's within our organisation who's working on it. So I'll certainly put you in touch with him. But yeah, and it is a live project. It's on its way. Hasn't come to conclusions yet, but it's very interesting.
Excellent. Thanks, Fiona. I mean, if there's anything, we've got a number of members that are in that kind of cultural or stroke music sort of scene. So if we can, share anything on your behalf, we're happy to do that as well. Are there any other questions or comments, experiences you'd like to kind of share just now, or? Okay. I'm thinking that's probably us. So, as I said, we'll share the presentations from the session. We will share email addresses also. And I guess just to say a huge thank you to all our speakers, Fiona, Laura, James. There's obviously fascinating and important work happening. I'm looking forward to seeing the net zero tool. And I to hearing the kind of flourishing partnerships between social enterprise and academia through Interface. And I think, you know, Fiona, you've made such a strong case for how beneficial that interface and academic support can be and the difference that it can make for the organisation. So thank you very much for that. I'd also just like to say a particular thank you to our co-host today, who behind the scenes have kept us all right, and also to the partners in our partners Interface and CES, from myself and from Social Enterprise Scotland, because you know, recognise that you've done most of the heavy lifting for this session. So thank you very much. Thanks everyone for coming along, and yeah, hopefully see you at another session sometime soon, and have a good day.